Coach Bob Huggins and his staff have had a fantastic offseason picking up players out of the transfer portal, but they're not done yet. They have an opportunity to land 2 top-notch players to finish out this roster for the 23-24 season. Mountaineer Paul and I are going to talk about it right after the intro. What is going on, college hoops fans, Mountaineer fans? This is Couz.
And this is Mountaineer Paul.
And we present to you
Hoops from the Hills, baby.
What is going on out there, Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz and Paul, and we're bringing you another episode of Hoops from the Hills, and we are excited to bring you this episode. We are talking about 2 players that the Mountaineers are going after in the transfer portal. One, we feel like they have a better chance to land than the other one, but I think they both have an opportunity to help this team in the 23-24 season. The first guy we're going to talk about, Paul, is Alexis Yetna. Alexis Yetna is a player out of Seton Hall. That's where he's been spent his last year, which was the 21-22 season, actually. He did not play in 22-23 because of an injury. He will have 1 year of eligibility remaining, is my understanding. Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But he's a forward, stands 6'8" tall, 225 pounds. And Paul, what are your initial thoughts about Alexis Yetna?
He's an Energizer bunny. As you'll read here in a few minutes, we were able to contact a former coach of his, a guy that's had several different titles in college basketball that knows a lot about him, was with the kid for actually 3 years, so knows a lot about him. But my initial take was, man, he'd be a really great piece to back up Trey Mitchell. This guy, he would be a starter at most places. He really would. We're just so loaded that he would probably be a 6th or 7th guy in this rotation. And he would be a great backup to Trey off the bench at the 4 spot. He averaged 7 rebounds a game and really didn't play as much as he could have due to a variety of reasons. So he's a rebounding machine, and according to his old coach, that's what he said about him. It's probably his best attribute. He can also stroke it from 3. He's a lefty. He really, really favors that left hand, doesn't really go over his left shoulder a whole lot. So that's something that maybe he could get better at or work on, and I'm sure that the NBA has told him that as well. But overall, this is a really impressive player. He's not the back-to-the-basket scorer Olivier Nkamhoua was, but important to mention, this kid is another foreign player, Frenchman at that.
Yeah. And you were talking about the coach we spoke to. This coach is Spencer Smith. He's the director of basketball operations at USF. Alexis Yetna spent the first 2 seasons of his career. And according to Smith, actually first 3 years of his career, because he was actually at USF 3 years and then came to Seton Hall to play his senior year. Smith went on to say he has not spoken to Yetna since he entered the portal, unfortunately, but he did have this to say. Here's what Smith had to say about Yetna and his game. His main thing is rebounding. He rebounds his tail off. Mountaineer fans love to hear that. Should fit in very well with Bob Huggins. He rebounds his tail off. Very effective and good touch around the rim. That's something this team has needed. Not nearly as strong with his right hand as his left. And if you guys go check his film out after we're done with this video, you'll see he is a lefty. And that's, makes a player harder to guard. He's an incredible locker room guy, Smith went on to say. Never met anyone who doesn't love the kid. Good leader, always lighthearted and smiling, just an awesome kid to have in your program. Injuries have just really taken a toll on him, unfortunately. Kid is so tough, but just has had bad breaks. What are your thoughts on those comments by Spencer Smith?
Really impressed, with what he had to say about the kid. I love the locker room aspect of it. You can never have enough leaders within a locker room of new guys. This guy could potentially be a glue guy from inside inside the locker room and on the court. He's got 4 or 5 years in college. So not that West Virginia has a shortage of those kind of players, but he would definitely add to the maturity of a team that's already really mature, at least from an age standpoint. And love the rebounding. And don't forget, he's an excellent defender too. And it's just a trend. You might as well just mark it down. If the Mountaineers are targeting someone, they're probably going to be a good rebounder, score around the basket a little bit, and they can also defend.
Right. Yeah. So Alexis Yetna, when I watched the film on this kid, like I mentioned, his energy, the rebounding is something I noticed right off the bat. Once I saw what Smith had to say, I was paying close attention. He's really good rebounder, and it's all mainly because of effort, man. He plays his butt off, and he can actually, and don't let it fool you, because he can shoot the ball. He's not a bad 3-point shooter either. So he's not just one of these guys that is going to be a garbage player, because he can do it all. He actually averaged 8 points a game his last season at Seton Hall. He averaged 8.1 points, 7.6 rebounds, and actually shot the ball 40% from the floor. And now he only shot 22 or 23% from three his last season, but early in his career at USF, he actually shot the ball at a higher percentage. He shot at 37% his freshman year. So he can shoot. He's not an elite shooter by any means, but he can shoot if he's open and if it's within the flow of the offense.
Yeah, similar to Trey.
Now let's move over. Paul, you got anything else you want to talk about with Alexis Yetna before we move over to Paul Mulcahy? Go ahead.
Yes. One last thing about Yetna is, obviously, and similarly to JT Daniels, this is a kid that has been injured a lot in his career, several times now, more than twice. And so the coaching staff is doing their due diligence on him. Unfortunately, this is the business end of things we don't like to hear. We want this kid to have a great career in college and get an education and also have a great chance at making the league. But sometimes reality is reality. And as with these injuries, you have to do what you have to do. If he is still going to be somebody that maybe hits the wall 5 or 6 games in, or one thing or another, you can't bring him in, unfortunately, even though we would love to. So I do know as of right now, they're very interested in him and he them. Just something really to keep an eye on, but also keep that injury history in the back of your mind.
Right. Yeah, and this team is in a point now. They've done such a good job out of the portal, and we can't discount the pieces we have coming back next year either. I mean, this is going to be a deep team, even if they don't land these guys. They don't have to be. They're not desperate. They need to be. They can be a little bit picky, and if they don't feel like a guy is worth taking a chance on for whatever reason, then they don't have to do it. It's a great place to be in, to be honest with you. So I'm really excited about what's to come in this 23-24 season. Now let's move over to the next guy. This is a guy that really will get you excited if you put his tape on, and his name's Paul Mulcahy. He's a guard from Rutgers. 6'7", 213 pounds, but he plays the point guard position. And we all know you don't see a lot of 6'7" point guards, but he's got those kind of skills with the ball in his hand. Paul, I'll let you start. What's the first thoughts to come to your mind when you see Paul Mulcahy on the basketball court?
It's funny, man. He is very similar to Jose Perez in how he goes about his business in certain ways. He loves to back down smaller guards and pass off of that. He loves throwing the one-handed passes one way or the other. He's really good over either shoulder. He's extremely tough. He's a New Jersey kid. He's a hometown Rutgers kid. Mm-hmm. And I saw a comment from one of the Rutgers people that said, please no, not the team that broke our hearts for so many years in football. Please don't get him. So obviously they're rooting against Mulcahy coming to Morgantown. There has been contact established. Don't know about the visit yet from the kid, but here's what I can tell you. He played on a very relevant Rutgers team last year that was really good, made the tournament. He was probably their second best player, probably their most important player. He had the ball in his hands on every play. He was their second best defender. There's a lot to like about him. He can really stroke it from deep. He He really is, to me, from watching it, similar to Kirk Risa, except he's about 4 or 5 inches taller.
Mhm.
And you can't understate how important that would be. And he and Kerr have really, really similar numbers, 9 points a game. Kerr has the assist advantage, but I'm not sure. It would be interesting to see who would win. I think that would be a battle if Mulcahy were to come to Morgantown for that starting point guard spot.
Yeah, and why not put one at the 2 and one at the 1? I mean, in your opinion, could you put Mulcahy at the 2 spot?
You could, but Raekwon Battle is a much more explosive scorer than he is. But if you want to talk about stability and running an offense, that would be a heck of a combination. Mulcahy at the 1 or the 2, and Kerr at the 1 or the 2. It would be really good. Listen, it's great to have these options if they happen. I do know from a source within the program that I'm not allowed to name, and this is somebody really close to it. They are after both of these players. This is on their wish list. Jay Kuntz and a company are going after both of these guys.
Yeah, I think Paul and I were talking before we started recording. I think Mulcahy is being recruited heavily by Kansas now. They've just jumped into the mix just today, actually, before we started doing this. So I think it's going to be a tough. Now, I'm not saying we can't beat out Kansas. We've shown we can beat out some of these bigger programs for some of these young men, but it's going to be tough. There are a lot of really good programs going after this young man. So, because he's that talented, if Kansas is going after him, that tells you how good he is. But I encourage you, once you get done watching this or listening to this, go turn on the highlight. You can find it on YouTube. Just Google it, Paul Mulcahy. You'll see some highlights. You'll see a senior year highlights on YouTube. It's about a 3 or 4 minute video. It will blow you away. There's a 25-minute video of his entire career. If you want to sit and watch that, if you're one of these film junkies like Paul here, he probably watched the entire thing. If you want to watch 25 minutes of around the back passes and alley oops, and like Paul said,
he does it all,
backing down smaller guards, and he's a good shooter too. Again, we talk about these guys and their skills, but both of these guys, Mulcahy even more so, can shoot the rock. I mean, Mulcahy's stats from last year: 8.3 points, 3.6 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 41.6% field goal percentage, and 37% from 3. So he can shoot the basketball. He shot 36% over his career from 3. So he's very consistent in that regard. And he's a 4-year player. He played in 31 games as a freshman at Rutgers and has started the last 3 years for Rutgers. So very, very, very talented young man. And Paul, I'm real high on the Engelman as far as talent, but I'm not quite as convinced that we need him, Paul. And I know you and I haven't discussed this before because I wanted to kind of save it for the show, but I'm a little bit worried that we're going to have too many guys playing the same positions. And somebody's giving minutes up, man. And if you start bringing in all these guys, you could already have it could cause potential issues in the locker room. You could have guys that have already graduated leave the team and enter the portal. Because remember, grad transfers can enter the portal anytime they want to. I'm worried that we have, and 2, are they filling spots that don't need to be filled and neglecting spots that do need to be filled? I'm not saying that's the case, but it is a concern I have that they're looking at the best possible player out there instead of filling needs. Does that make sense?
I understand that criticism. Okay, so tell me who the backup for Kirk Risa is.
Joe Toussaint.
Or is that the backup to Raekwon Battle?
What about the kid from Manhattan? Not Perez, Silverio. What about Silverio? You got him too.
Yeah, he is not typically known as a guy that handles the ball, though. He's more
I'm talking about the backup for Battle.
Right, at the 2 spot. Yeah, but you still have to handle the ball out there at the 2. I mean, he could. He's definitely capable of it. But is he anywhere as good as A Mulcahy? No. You are completely correct with the concern that this could cause some division in the locker room. But I think these guys all know what it is. Hitmen are for hire, and West Virginia's hiring. And I think they're leveling up as these guys come available. That's what they've been doing all along. And if they can get better at a spot, they're going to do it. And I know that's maybe that's not the way to do this. That's the way they're doing it. And I would much rather have Mulcahy at the 2 or the 1 backing up somebody, or even vice versa, than say bringing Silverio, who is a 3-point specialist, in to do it. I think there is a spot for another guard on this roster, and there's certainly a spot for another power forward. You can't convince me that James Okonkwo and Mo Wiggy are quite ready to ascend to a full-time backup role on a team that's looking to contend. I do think they're good players, and I think they'll contribute. But a guy that, like these 2 players that have got 4 years experience at the college level, is invaluable. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not saying concerns aren't valid, because they are. This is just the other side.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted you to give me, because I knew you would disagree with that take based on the conversation we've been having offline. And I'm not saying this kid's not a good player. I'm not at all. He's a great player. I've watched his highlights. He's a fantastic basketball player. I worry there again. You're going to have a very, very guard heavy team. But that being said, when you look at the teams who win national titles, what do they
guard
have?
Heavy.
They have a
guards.
lot. They have great guard play. So they have great guard play, and they have at least one guy down low who can clean up the boards, and who can score with his back to the basket, and who can help protect the rim. And we're going to have that in Jesse Edwards, and even potentially another guy in Yetna, and obviously Trey Mitchell too. So we're going to have multiple guys who can do those things. But when you look at the guards, I don't know, man. I guess I'm just a little bit. I'm a loyalist, and I worry that these kids that have stuck with Bob Huggins through these tough years, they're all going to get relegated to the bench, man. And I'm not saying I know it's big boy basketball. I get that, and I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, but there's a part of me that wants to see those guys step up, and maybe they do. Maybe they step up and beat a couple of these guys out for minutes. It's very possible that Seth Wilson gets more minutes than Omar Silverio or some of these other guys, because from what I've heard from communicating with people that see practices, he's been shooting lights out at practice. They said the kid barely misses. So he could end up getting a lot of minutes, and that's just one example there. You've also got Kobe Johnson, you've got Conquo, you've got Wagee, these other guys. Josiah Harris. We forget to even mention him at times. So those guys are still on the team. And now what does excite me is the depth of this team. We could potentially have 12 guys on this team, or 13, that are good enough to play. That's pretty impressive, in my opinion. Most teams don't have that.
And guess what that allows Hugs to really do? He doesn't have to care about, how he's got to work around being so aggressive because of the lack of depth in previous teams. Last year, if Eric Stevenson got in foul trouble, we were in bad shape. We had nobody to give the ball to score it, really, outside of Trey. And so I think Travis Kenobi or somebody has said they're convinced that Bob is trying to have a 5-in, 5-out team this year. Literally, like 10 guys are going to play the same amount of minutes or somewhere thereabouts.
Very possible.
And when you look at it like that, Mulcahy and Yetna should have plenty of playing time and room to play.
And one injury doesn't derail your season either.
Exactly. And I think he's really he realizes that he's on it's all, we heard what Rim Baker said. All options were on the table. We haven't even discussed this shit on the show.
Yeah.
All options were on the table for Bob Huggins at a certain point in time, including firing him. Hoppy Kirkspool asked him the question. He answered it. And so Bob is probably trying to, any kind of weakness that he can possibly see, he's trying to fix. This could be his last year. It's very possible that pressure may decide that he has to retire gracefully after this year. So I think they're just by any means trying to get him as best last performance as possible if that ends up being the case.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're probably right. And look, I'm excited about it. I'm not. I know I made that argument earlier, but I would rather have too many talented players on this team than not enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
definitely a good problem to have. And something you and I have talked about before on this show, and I don't think gets talked about enough is this Italy trip they're doing in the offseason. The last time West Virginia went to Italy, if I'm not mistaken, they had a good team. The last time they played overseas, they had a really good team that year because it gives them time to gel. It gives them time to play together. It gives them, last year we had a team full of transfers. They didn't have a chance to gel together until the season started, really. That's not going to be a problem this time because they're going to have all these games, several games that they're going to get to play together over the summer in Italy.
Mm.
So they're going to know each other's tendencies. They're going to know how each other works well together. He's going to know which lineups work the best together on the court. Those kind of things. So a lot of the wrinkles will be worked out before they start the season. And I think that is when you have this many new guys on a team that have never played together before, I think that's important. And something you mentioned earlier, most of these guys are older guys that know what they're here for. They're here to win. And hopefully all egos will be out the window and they're coming here to win. And that's what you got to hope for in these types of situations.
This has been a heck of a breakdown, guys. If you haven't liked the video by now, what are you doing? Like the video. I'm sure you're going to have something to say about the subject. Drop us a comment. And obviously, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed by now, you're 22 minutes in. You need to subscribe. You like what you see. Subscribe to the channel. Get us to 1,000 guys. As you can see, I feel personally that we provide content that's worth that and beyond. We are the only true blue West Virginia basketball YouTube show out there. Support us, guys. We're working hard for you. Trying to bring you good content. Couz even threw me a curveball today on the show. It's been pretty fun.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this episode, man. But yeah, guys, subscribe, hit us up, man. We want to communicate with you, interact with you, so drop that comment and look us up on social media. You can see our Twitter handles there at the bottom. Paul is at Paul Mountaineer on Twitter. I'm at Couz206. So, send us a DM, interact with us, let us know what you think about the show. Don't forget the notification button as well to be notified of future videos. And if we decide to do a live stream, it'll notify you of live streams. So, we appreciate the support that you've already given us and the support to come. So, with that being said, guys, we appreciate you tuning into this episode of Hoops from the Hills. And until the next one, we are out.